can start. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining me again. I know that it takes some effort on your part to be present at this time and to engage me in some of the issues. But I want to let you know in a very personal way that I'm very grateful that you would take the time and that you would be interested in some of the issues that I'm going to raise today. Today I'm going to deal with the issue of education. Education is a very, very broad issue, and it's a very, very important ingredient in the development process. And there is no way that I can deal with everything today. But I would try to zero in on two things. One, I want to ask if the debate that we are having in education, if the issues that we are pursuing and the things that are hottest on our agenda in education are indeed the right things to be debating. In other words, yes, we might have some problems with SEA, but is the debate about which school a child is placed in? Now, I understand the importance of that because which secondary school a child goes in may well determine his or her future. But I wonder if we're having the right debate about that, because I don't know if you're aware, but about 10 to 12% of the students who are supposed to be in primary school are not there. They don't get any primary education at all. And the end result is that you have lost kids in the primary system, and then because of the SEA, you have a segmentation of the population in the secondary school. And because the performance of every secondary school is not the same or is not always positive, then the child is at risk by the time he or she gets into the secondary school system. I admit, appreciate, and understand all of that, but I still want to ask the question whether we are debating the right things. The second thing is that when a child gets to secondary school, they may do well in the CXC, they may go on to CAPE, they may do well there. And those that do well in that system are winners in the system. Some may get scholarships, some may do well enough to go on to tertiary education. And if they get a university degree, they really have a platform for opportunity and for freedom. But as we know, at best, the secondary school system deals with the positive results for about 50% of the population. And we have 50% of the population, that's to say the school-age population, that are not doing well at all. And the last 30%, the bottom 30%, find themselves in situations where they are either dropouts or they don't pass any subjects, and therefore they have a limited prospect in the future, certainly in terms of education, opportunities and development and rehabilitation. And therefore that is another problem with our school system. At the tertiary level, we have a number of graduates coming out of the tertiary sector every year. Many of them get university degrees, some of them go on to higher education and get masters, and so on. But we also have a high unemployment rate for university graduates. A lot of them cannot get jobs. Many of them are underemployed. That is to say, they are not using their talents or their training or their education to really make a difference in the workplace. Many get frustrated, they think of migration, etc. So between the drive to migration, which is brain drain, and the frustration either in an underemployment situation or not getting a job at all, you have large numbers of frustrated people out of the tertiary system, so that the end result of the movement from primary to secondary to tertiary is a certain amount of dissatisfaction on the part of those who even do the best in the system and make it to the point of acquiring a university degree. So that is why I'm asking the question, if we are asking the right questions about the education system, and I will tell you why. So that's my first question. The second issue is that I don't know if you're aware of the World Economic Forum. This is a forum that meets every year. And what they do is they bring together business leaders from all over the world. They bring together government representatives from all over the world. They bring in expert speakers and interested parties are invited and they take part in the World Economic Forum. And basically that is focused on what is happening in the world economic system, as the name suggests, what is happening in terms of business development and growth, what are the kinds of opportunities that are possible, what direction is the global economy taking, and what is the impact of technology and science and research, and what is happening in the marketplace and what is happening in individual countries. What impact are all of these things happening on what we need to do in order to keep businesses and the society and the economy competitive and productive and so on? Because at the end of the day, why do you have business? I mean, basically you do business in order to create wealth and prosperity, but out of that also, with the entrepreneurial energy and the managerial capability, creates jobs and opportunities for people. So one of the things that the World Economic Forum does is that it produces a jobs report. And they produced a jobs report for 2018, that's last year. And in that jobs report, they identified 10 vital skills which human beings need to be successful in the world of work in the context of competitive business. Now, let us try and appreciate for a minute what are the 10 skills that they have identified. You may not agree with all of them, but I think it's important to know and to try to apply what they are saying to our own society to try and figure out whether we are on the right track. And secondly, whether we are concerned about the correct things in education. So the first skill that they identify is complex problem solving. Now, you and I know that challenges crop up all the time and problems emerge when you least expect it. That is the nature of life and work. And these challenges, these problems, have to be overcome. The problems have to be solved if progress is to be made. So the wherewithal to be a creative solution finder is what a human being needs to successfully engage complex problems in our time and in the unfolding future. And the question I want to ask you is whether our education system, configured as it is, creates creative solution finders and problem solvers coming out of the primary, secondary, and tertiary education system. I will hold any answers, but I ask you the question. Does our system, configured as it is, provide these people who can engage in complex problem solving? The second issue that they identify as being important is critical thinking. I think some of you would know that in 2004, I had a major critical thinking conference in Trinidad and Tobago, and thousands of people attended that forum at the University of the West Indies. We involved faculty, we involved administrative staff there, but we also involved a lot of teachers, a lot of people in business, etc. And we brought experts from all over the world, from Harvard, from Yale, from University of East Anglia, from Northwestern University, from University of Utah, wherever they existed, where they were concerned about critical thinking issues, because the thinking about critical thinking was changing. I brought them here to Trinidad and Tobago, and we had a big conference. And the next year, 2005, I established the Institute of Critical Thinking at the University of the West Indies, which still exists there on the university campus in St. Augustine. But why did I think that critical thinking was so important? I was principal of the university then, and in my inaugural speech, I chose as the theme, working for a learning society, in which a learning society was really the society that could, by its learning endeavors and its learning focus, become a competitive and highly productive society. So why was I interested in critical thinking, and why is it 15 years later the World Economic Forum is identifying critical thinking as something important? And I'll tell you why. A critical thinker is a person who questions things as they are. Whatever exists, that person will question it. And they will question it to see whether it can be better, whether you can have improvements. And that is a very important thing, because it's the basis of the evolution of technology, innovation, and creative solutions in a society. Because if you question the world as it is, and you are able to design or develop something better, then human beings will have a better life. And the progress of the human race or human society will be faster. So without critical thinking, the status quo will also always remain the same, and innovations will never emerge. Now, let us stop there for a minute. I think that there is serious critical thinking that we need in relation to the education system in Trinidad and Tobago and to the education system worldwide. So I want to say that the critical thinking skills that we need for the graduate coming out of the education system also demands that as members of society, as people concerned about development, as people concerned about education, that we also critically assess the education system as it is. Because if we do not do that, we will make no change in education. There will be no innovation, and there will be no evolution of that system or the quality of education that our students are able to absorb and deploy. The third issue that they identified as being very important, the World Economic Forum, in their jobs report, is creativity to turn ideas into a tangible income. Now, all of us consider ourselves creative. You know, we can do things. We can make a paper plane. We might be able to do a drawing. We might be able to do some graphics. We might be able to write a story. We may be able to make a short film. And creativity, we think, is everywhere. And if you give people a chance, they will show what are the creative potentials that they have. So, but what they identify is creativity to turn ideas into a tangible outcome. And we must pay attention to what that means. Because it's great to have a good idea, but the really significant thing is how you put that idea to good use. So that you might do research, You might develop ideas, you might develop concepts, but what is really required to make a difference, to create wealth, is to turn those ideas, that research, into tangible outcome. And that requires creative application. Because the truth of the matter is that successful people make things, they do things, and they make things happen. And that is also true of successful countries. So it's not only good to be creative or to have ideas, but the real creativity is turning the ideas into a tangible product. So, let's say Trinidad and Tobago, one of our greatest creativity creations is Carnival, which we have annually. All right, and we have nice masks and people come and see it, and there's a lot of creativity, a lot of innovation in that. And we do turn it into tangible products for 2 days of the year and for the competitions that precede the carnival. But how do you turn carnival into something that has a sustainable life from one carnival to the other, and out of that create tangible products that have economic and financial meaning? And that is the issue that is involved here. For instance, why couldn't we be making masks that are sold that are what you might call a souvenir coming out of Trinidad and Tobago? Why can't we have carnival dolls in which the costumes of the year are part of the prospect of part of the product, and people can take that away? And so 100 other items that you can do. And when you think of multiple carnivals across the world in which Trinidad and Tobago is a player, a participant, a contributor, you begin to see how the one creativity of carnival involving multiple imaginations can in fact turn itself into a whole range of globally tangible products. The fourth thing that the World Economic Forum talks about as a skill that students need to deal in the world as it is and as it is changing is people management skills. And that's the fourth skill that they identify. So you could know a lot, but at the end of the day, you still have to get things done with other people. Now, generally, people accept this as true. That is to say that it is only through others that a leader, a manager, an ideas person can get things done. To achieve results, tasks have to be performed and people have to do them. Without people working purposefully together, little will get done. And even if it gets done, the quality will be poor. So people are important and central to the process of getting things done. So that management capacity to work with people, to work through people, to work collaboratively in order to have the end result as tangible and having been achieved is a very important skill that you need, and the schools should be teaching that. Now remember, what the World Economic Forum is saying is not that everybody should get a management degree. What they are saying is that every student coming out of the system should have those basic human managerial skills so that whatever their field of study or their profession, that would be an element of their talent and ability. Okay? The fifth skill that is identified by the World Economic Forum is coordinating with others or collaboration. When I was Minister of Planning and I did the medium-term report 2011 to 2014, a big part of that was the issue of collaboration. People didn't think it was important because it's an intangible, but there is nothing that you can do in the world today of significance unless you can have collaborative teams and collaborative energy at work. So collaboration and coordination are essential skills in today's world because collaboration multiplies individual talent and effort, propels value creation, and enhances results. The old adage that more is better than one is often true. Many hands make light work and many brains make for better work. Many imaginations make for greater creativity. The sixth skill is emotional intelligence, which is identified as another vital and necessary skill. And what is emotional intelligence really? Well, emotional intelligence is really the ability to empathize, to put yourself in the shoes of someone else, to appreciate someone else's point of view or perspective. Because when you can do that, put yourself in someone else's shoes, appreciate where someone else is coming from, that makes for flexibility. It makes it possible to make adjustments as you engage. It makes it possible to compromise. It makes it possible to change your plans. It makes it possible to avoid bad decisions if you are heading down the wrong road. It saves one from one's self-opinionated, arrogant self. So you see why the government of Trinidad and Tobago is a problem. This is a government absolutely without emotional intelligence. It is not prepared to be flexible. It is not prepared to make adjustments, to compromise, to change plans, to avoid bad decisions. It continues in its own self-opinionated, arrogant way. And that is one thing that you do not want graduates coming out of the education system in Trinidad and Tobago having, or else you're going to continue to have governments like the one we have now. So it has implications not just for business, but for governance, for politics, for engagement of the society, for the social order. And it is important to remember that. The seventh important skill identified is judgment and decision making. You notice a lot of people criticize PM Rowley for his bad judgment and for the bad decisions that he makes. Well, that is because maybe he didn't learn these skills in school. Maybe in his time he did not have it, have the opportunity to be engaged in that. But we cannot allow another generation, multiple generations of graduates to continue like that, because in today's world of complex problems and multiple challenges, every individual requires discernment, especially if you are a leader. It requires the capacity for discrimination, making seeing the very fine nuances of differences between one thing and another. It's many times requires detachment, so you can squeeze the emotion out of it and make the right decision. And perhaps a range of other intuitive skills developed over time and through experience, because time and experience do help you to hone your skills and give you an intuitive sense of what is the right thing and what is not. Okay? So that skill of decision making and judgment, these are very important skills. The eighth skill that they identified, the World Economic Forum, is service orientation, which is based on consideration of the needs of others. I think that the service quality in Trinidad and Tobago is poor. It is poor in the public service. It is poor in the tourism sector. People complain about service in Tobago, in the tourism sector all the time, but it's all over Trinidad as well. And when you go to a place and you have good service, it really does make a difference. We do not have good service in the hospitals always. Sometimes you do, sometimes you do not. And what they identify is service orientation, and service orientation is based on the consideration of the needs of others. Remember I mentioned emotional intelligence. Well, service orientation is connected to the notion of emotional intelligence. Now, in sales and marketing jargon, they refer to something called customer service, or they talk about customer care and consideration, so that you give consideration and care and convenience and value to the customer. But in the world in which we live, we are all customers of each other, and you see, that is where the service orientation becomes critical. And each one of us has to learn to serve the other. A service culture, therefore, is seen as a value-creating and wealth-creating culture. Service, therefore, is a currency of value. And they are saying that you cannot wait to go into the workplace before you develop that skill. These skills have to be understood and appreciated and practiced, all right, in the education system before we go out into the workplace. The ninth skill that they mentioned, the ninth one, is negotiation skills for win-win outcomes. This is another valuable skill identified. Why is this important? Because the zero-sum game is self-defeating, and winning with a zero-sum approach and methodology sours the game for the next round or next event. When everyone wins, value is created through goodwill and through the wealth that is created in the broad sense of the word. All right? Because wealth is created when you create value, and further opportunities are made possible. But when you have a zero-sum game, when one person wins or one group wins and the other group loses, then you have a lot of bad blood and the conflict is built into the future. I wrote an article about Dr. Rowley and his thinking and his approach, and I said that he was involved in a zero-sum game, and in that game, one side wins and the other side always loses. And that is how we have come to where we are today in many things. Because when you play that zero-sum game, even if you win today, you may very well lose tomorrow and the day after that. So this thing about win-win negotiations with a recognition of stakeholders and their rights, their interests, etc., and moving the game forward is very important. And the 10th and final skill that the World Economic Forum lists or identifies is what they call cognitive flexibility. And I want to explain that a little bit. What is cognitive flexibility? My take, my appreciation of that is that it is the ability to adapt to any eventuality and circumstance. We live in a world in which you have unprecedented developments. Nobody, for instance, would have thought that you would have the turbulence in American politics that President Trump has brought to America. Nobody thought that that would have the impact that it would have worldwide, in terms of trade, in terms of financial dealings, in terms of the implications for immigration, etc. But it has happened, okay? Nobody thought that we would be in a situation where we would be so heavily dependent on energy that we could not even think of how to get to economic recovery. And we can go on and on. We could talk about climate change and the unprecedented consequences of that. Who would have thought that Dominica, for instance, would have been wiped out with a hurricane in the way that they have? You know, so the world is full of surprises. And the unexpected happens. Things don't always go as planned. Mistakes happen. Malevolence can sometimes be a factor. Predictability is never assured. So what does one do? One needs a certain level of stoicism and certainly resilience. These are requirements for success and sustainability in our world. So this issue of cognitive flexibility, no matter what you are thinking, where you are psychologically, philosophically, etc., the world changes on you because this is a world of disruptive changes. You need to have the wherewithal, the stoicism that is required, the resilience, the optimism, to ensure that notwithstanding the circumstances and the transformed or changed circumstances before you, you can be successful and you can create the conditions for sustainability. So my question is, can our primary and secondary and tertiary level education system give us those kinds of people with those 10 skills? Can we, in our present system, do that? I don't think they can. I want to mention the skills again as headlines so that you'll remember. 1, complex problem solving skills. 2, critical thinking skills. 3, the creativity to turn ideas into tangible outcomes. 4, management skills. Management skills that involve working with people to get the job done with and through people. The 5th skill is coordinating and collaborating with others to get things done, especially in this multidisciplinary time where mathematicians need to work with artists and artists need to work with computer whizzes, and computer whizzes need to work with climate change experts, etc. Emotional intelligence, that is number 6. 7, judgment and the capacity for decision making with discernment. 8, service orientation, in which all of us see ourselves as customers to each other and service providers to each other. Negotiation skills for win-win outcomes, so that peace, stability, value creation, wealth creation are the result of effective negotiations. And the final skill, cognitive flexibility. That's the ability to deal with any eventuality, no matter how unprecedented or how surprising, by having the kind of character and disposition and wherewithal and the imaginative and knowledge skills in order to deal with that. So again, I get to my fundamental question. Are we asking the right questions about our education system given these 10 skills that we need? And secondly, can our current education system, configured as it is, give us these 10 skills to make our people successful in the world and to make us as a nation successful in the world? I will stop at this point and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have or take any comments from you. Thank you very much. My name is Boindradat Tiwari. I am the Member of Parliament for Caroni Central for the United National Congress, the opposition party in Trinidad and Tobago, and I hope soon, with your help, that we will be in government effecting the plans to rescue Trinidad and Tobago and return it to growth and prosperity.
So good morning, Dr. Tiwari. We have one comment from our viewer. Oftentimes, high academic expectations exert unnecessary pressure on students who may not be able to compete with students who may be performing better than them, and this often leads to depression, anxiety, and in an extreme case, suicide. How can we manage students who do not just academically but mentally and emotionally in each school? How do we it damages them psychologically. So how does the academic system, how are we going to cope with this?
We have to change the curriculum. Not everybody can be an academic, and not everybody can do well in school in traditional ways, but everybody can do well in something. When I was principal of the St. Augustine campus, I brought Howard Gardner here. Howard Gardner was then at Harvard University. I think he's now attached to New York University in the city of New York. But he was then at Harvard University, and he had written, of course, extensively about the notion of multiple intelligences and the fact that what you needed to do is to fashion the curriculum to suit the talent and disposition of the child or the individual. And there is a lot of work has gone on now which question Gardner and so on, and raise other issues and have other implications. But I think we need to have curriculum transformation to allow students to develop their skills and their talents, which may not necessarily be in the academic area. I think everybody can get a basic primary education. I think that the numeracy, the literacy issues, the comprehension issues are critical at the primary level for whatever they do afterwards. But I certainly think even at primary school level, we can have practical things. So for instance, gardening in schools is an important thing in a primary school. That can help. That can allow you to study things not only like not gardening and planting, but also the environment, nature, the weather, geography, climate issues, and so on. And there are many other things that we can do. We can use sports in the primary school to have education about sports and about physical education and things like that. These things are very important. We can use creativity in the school, the arts, etc., to give people opportunities to do other things. And while they are playing an instrument or developing a talent, they can also be learning about music or that particular discipline, etc. So that, you know, I mean, there are ways of being creative with the curriculum. And when you go into the secondary school system, I think that is where you've got to have, in the secondary school system, not just an academic curriculum, but also a vocational curriculum as well, where students can choose things that they might have a talent for, or they might have an appreciation for, or they might have a disposition for. And you just let the student do what they can. And if you have a system that allows people to attain qualifications in whatever field they engaged by meeting the success factors, by doing well, you would find that the academic stress, which leads to psychiatric and psychological problems, would not be as severe as they are. You'll still have them because human beings will always have those kinds of problems, but you may not have them at the level and with the intensity and in the numbers that you have now.
So Dr. Tiwari, understanding that not all students are academically inclined, do you think it is feasible to convert some of the schools that do not function as academically sound as they should into technical and vocational centers, which strategically align students to alternative skills?
No. I think that that will ghettoize the vocational part of education, and it will create a structure of education that is hierarchical, in which academic education is going to be seen as superior, and the people who are involved in the other streams are going to be seen as inferior people, incapable of academic achievement. That is wrong. I think what you need to do is to have schools in which you have a variety of things that people can do. And I want to say this, there is no reason why an academically gifted student who's doing well in physics and chemistry and everything else and getting A's and 1s and so on might not be also interested in woodwork and might not be interested in learning something about agriculture or learning something about climate. So we've got to stop this discrimination between fields of study and understanding that the world is moving towards interdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity, and more than that, that people have multiple talents and that you can yoke these talents together in different ways. And given the way that the world is collaborating now, where you need people from different fields, all right, who look at problems from different angles in order to solve huge and complex problems in the world, then the education for the individual is better if it allows the individual multiple exposures.
Dr. Tiwari, do you think more importance should be placed on having guidance officers and social workers in each school?
Yes, I think it's important. I think children need guidance. I mean, the ideal school is a school in which you have very good teachers, you have disciplined endeavor that is enforced, that allows for some conformity with standards and expectations, but which also has freedom in the classroom, in which the student can be creative and can be independent in thought, can question and can engage in ideas in a very, very open way. So you need to have that mix in the schools. But children, you also need to have in the school the parents and the teachers working together for the sake of the development of the students, individually and collectively, and also for the development of the school. But you need guidance officers to deal with problems that crop up in school, so that students can know that they have a place to turn if they have an issue to resolve and cannot resolve it themselves.
Dr. Tiwari, one of the other questions that our viewers have presented today is, do we have a database of areas of qualified academics and learned individuals?
I don't know whether we have it, but I'm sure it's something that can be put together. I mean, it is possible to find out every student that has graduated from the tertiary sector in Trinidad and Tobago. It is possible to find out every student who has studied abroad and come back to Trinidad and Tobago. It is possible to find out who are the people who are teaching in the system. If an effort is made, it can we can do it, but the question is, what would you use that database for? And if it is to be used constructively, I think it could be a valuable database.
Another question that one of our viewers have is, education has been seen as a building block of society. What are your thoughts on the current structure of the education system in Trinidad and Tobago and its ability to mold and provide growth for the future leaders of Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, that is a question I'm asking. I'm questioning the entire education system. And I think what we need curriculum transformation of a high order. If we have a world that is committed to sustainable development and 17 goals of sustainable development, is the curriculum that we are pursuing now at primary, secondary, and tertiary education going to give us people who will contribute to sustainable development in the world? So that's the first thing. And if it's not, if it is, I would be very surprised. And if it's not, then the curriculum needs to be transformed. The world is not going to be able to create a job for everybody. No society is going to be able to. So we need entrepreneurs. Is the education system creating entrepreneurs? If it is, I would consider that it's doing so on a very limited scale. And my own feeling is that we need more entrepreneurs. The world needs more entrepreneurs. And if we are to get more entrepreneurs, then we have to transform the curriculum to give us entrepreneurs. Is the society productive? Are the industries in our society competitive? Are the industries in our society competitive? The answer to that is no. So the issue of productivity and competitiveness need to be included in the curriculum, so people understand what it takes to be a productive person, what it takes to be a competitive industry, what it takes to make a difference and to compete in the world. So when they go out into the world of work, they can deal with things like that. I mentioned the skills, the 10 skills, and how vital that is. If you do not have critical thinkers and creative thinkers, how are you going to get the transformative entrepreneurs? how are you going to get the projects that are going to take you away from fossil fuel dependence into new renewable energy industries? How are you going to get the people that are going to transform the economy and diversify the economy? And how are you going to get the scientists who are going to create the innovations that are necessary to transform the society we have? If you want to transform this society, and we have to transform this society, you cannot be putting out people in the university system in 2020 that we were putting out in 2010 or 2000 or 1990 or 1980. I mean, obviously something has to give.
Dr. Tiwari, can you comment on our ability in the future to be the provider of human resources and bilateral arrangements that can be made to both countries mutually benefit?
Which both countries?
Trinidad and Tobago. Any other countries?
With other countries?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you can make arrangements like that. Collaborative arrangements in the world are very important. And I mean, it is possible to do it. I mean, we can make arrangements with many of the industries here that are invested from abroad. In Trinidad and Tobago, there are over 100 multinationals in this country, and we can make arrangements with them. We can make arrangements with international organizations, whether they are invested here or not, because the world is looking for talent. But most of all, we need to attract more investment here from outside that will give us the opportunity to build a research industry that will create the conditions for collaborative research between industry and the university here, but also between industries here, university here, and international universities and their own research arms in other countries. We also need to move with the technology, because it's not just diversification of product or diversification of markets. You're talking about diversification of the value chain, where you are moving the country into fourth industrial revolution types of interventions in manufacture, etc., into robotics, into artificial intelligence, etc. And what that means is that the skill of the human being has to be at a higher level, because the machine is doing all of these works, the technology is doing all of these works, and what you need is the mind and creativity of the individual. So for all of these reasons, we have to have a transformation of the education system.
CXC has been allowed to function on their own accord, making reference to the 2017 CXC issue, where CXC not only released results late but also changed results 11 days after. How can we engage CXC, urging them to have a better standards for?
I think that is a simple problem to solve. Just meet with them and make the system more efficient and effective. I mean, that is not a rocket science problem. I mean, there is a problem of some kind of efficiency or deficiency in the system, and it needs to be corrected, that is all. I mean, it doesn't have to be a national crisis. It's always a crisis when people's lives are affected. But people's lives do not have to be affected every year in the same way. So if you find the problem one year, you create the collaborative arrangements to get at the root of the problem. And on the basis of that, you find a solution and you try it. If something happens that is a mistake again, you correct that until you get it right. But these are simple problems that the world solves all the time.
Dr. Tiwari, does the UNC government have any plans to restructure or modify the current education system to an increasing globalizing world?
Well, I mean, that's what I'm talking about here now. The education system must be aligned to the development strategy for your country, for one thing, and it must be aligned to global trends. Okay, it must be aligned to global trends. So once you align to issues in Trinidad and Tobago once you are aligned to the diversification of Trinidad and Tobago, once you are aligned to a diversification that takes you into a green economy, a blue economy, an orange economy, which is the artistic part of your economy, the creative arts part of it, and a silver economy, which is really the Asian economy. And once you are aligned to the trends like the fourth industrial revolution, the impact and power of artificial intelligence, then it means your industry has to transform. And it means that your education system has to transform with it. Okay, that's it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've spent about an hour. I outlined some of the issues. The two fundamental questions I asked is, one, are we asking the right questions about education? And the second question I asked is that, given what the World Economic Forum identified last year as the 10 critical skills that we need to deal in the world economic system, do we need to do something more, something different, something else with our education system? And that was the issue that I was exploring today. I hope that has been useful to you. I will engage the educational issues again, because I think education is critical to the development process. In this world in which human capital, intellectual capital, creativity, innovation, competitive capacity, research, all those things are critical. Education system and the kind of education system you have and the kind of people you put out of the education system, let's say the kind of people you turn out of the education system, the kind of people you produce, the kind of products you create out of the education system are really critical to the development process. I thank you for joining me this morning. I thank you for your questions, and I thank you for the role that you have played in making this morning's engagement a success. Thank you very much.